Everybody can see the SEO versus PPC screen. Yeah, fantastic. So with that said, let's jump into things. So for today's agenda, and maybe first off, I'll just share a little bit quickly about myself. I've been in digital marketing now. The words are really slow to come off my tongue, but for 20 years, I've been a full-time digital marketing. Started in January of 2001 at a little local software company that happened to have an email list of over 1 million people and nobody doing email marketing. So that was actually my first job in web marketing, was taking over a list of 1 million people and getting to figure out the email strategy for them, which, these days, I guess I was very lucky in terms of having some background in writing and software, but certainly zero experience in email marketing. So you don't get those kind of opportunities too much anymore. But long story short, that went really well in that role and grew into myself running the e-commerce marketing, which at that point we ended up doing about $12–13 million a year in sales of a $49 product. So got to do literally thousands upon thousands of different variations and tests. And it was really like going to school and got to, again, manage a team of people in all the different disciplines. So really got a great grounding there. Worked in a couple of other startups. The last one being one out of San Diego, where I got to work from here and go down there once a month. Sadly, they had some new executive come in that reeled in the remote workers. So had a choice of moving down there, which I didn't want to remove my family from beautiful Victoria, BC. And so I declined that offer, and they declined to keep my employment ongoing. So with not a lot going on yet in e-commerce and online marketing in Victoria, starting my own agency seemed like the most logical thing at the time. So yeah, in 2007, we founded our corporation, and really since mostly did consulting right out of the gate, but had started practicing SEO and PPC personally as early as 2008. And let me tell you, it was a lot easier back then, with search a lot less competitive in the PPC, and in the search SEO area, we could do things like post 3 articles a month to an article marketing website and watch clients' rankings increase, like literally. It a whole lot easier than now. So that said, that's kind of where we're at. And now I've got the good fortune of being surrounded by a great team. You can no longer be just a single person doing web marketing. There's just too much out there, too many areas that you absolutely need expert level knowledge in if you want to be in a competitive market. So yeah, so get to work with great folk like Yulia, who's on the call today, as well as friends and partners like Mike, who also is on the call, who's a longtime web marketer as well, and we'll introduce them later. So with all that said, let me get right into the meat of things. And we're going to do a short presentation first, just looking at the interface and kind of explaining how Google search works in terms of both pay-per-click marketing as well as search engine optimization. Then we're going to turn it over to the panel for Mike and Yulia for some lively discussion about the relative merits of both approaches. And then we'll do some wrap up and Q&A, where happy to stay on as long as people have questions about their own offerings and their own businesses, websites. Usually, but we will wrap up everything formal by 11 o'clock. Again, I can't stand it when people go over time and don't follow agendas, so we try to be good about following that as well. So first, let's start with some quick definitions, because I sometimes forget that folks are all over the map in their level of knowledge. So of course, SEO stands for search engine optimization, and that refers to the quote, organic results in search, the ones that Google just puts up naturally. There's no charge for appearing there. And we'll dig in a bit closer there as well. Next, PPC stands for pay-per-click. And funny story there, but mentioning that first software company I was in, I attended a presentation and somebody was talking about pay-per-click marketing. And I remember thinking, pay-per-click, paper? What's paper got to do with the web? What's this all about, this pay-per-click? This makes no sense to me. So yeah, and it's funny because that just came up for me as I was preparing this. But yeah, definitely lots of confusing terminology in our industry. But long story short, most online advertising is done on the basis of a pay-per-click model. And that's basically where you simply get charged every time somebody clicks on an ad. You get to set daily budgets, you get to set bid amounts for your clicks, but essentially you don't get charged anything until someone clicks on your ad, and then depending on what medium you're in, that click cost will range anywhere from 5 cents to $1 to $3, or in some crazy industries, like way higher. Gosh, I was looking at a personal injury account out of Las Vegas, and people in that market are literally paying over $100 per click for personal injury type searches. So it's all over the map. Really what defines it is how competitive an area is and how much value there is in getting those visitors. SEM stands for search engine marketing. It's often confused to kind of mean the paid side or PPC, but really SEM is the umbrella for both paid and SEO. And of course, most of the stuff we're talking about involves Google, but Bing is also a worthy search engine in some regards. And big reason really is that often it's quite a bit more cost effective than Google because it's less competitive. So you'll have a small audience, but that said, there are some key audiences that don't change their browsers when they get computers. And in some cases, that's areas like education and government where they're not allowed for security or IT reasons, or sometimes seniors is another market we've had. Definitely observed that there's a high percentage of seniors on Bing, which my assumption again is that they haven't changed their Microsoft browser on their new laptop. And so they've got Bing as their default search engine. Interestingly, Microsoft Edge is now a decent browser. It used to be horrendous, but that's another matter. So jumping right in, I know this is almost impossible to look at, so I'm going to switch to a live view. I just always like to have the materials ready in case there is an issue with search. So in this example, we're looking at kind of the local search results. And what I've done here is I've put in a search for chiropractor Victoria, BC, pretty typical search. And so what we see here is at the very top, Google's inserted an announcement about COVID, obviously quite important right now. And then what we see, interestingly, in this result set, there are basically no pure SEO results on this page right now. We're seeing 3 ads at the top for Stridwick Chiropractic, Chiro Victoria, BC, Saanich Physio. Interestingly, we do work in this area, and I'm not going to share with you which of these are our clients, but scrolling along, you can see it's like, oh, here's a Google map. And what it's doing is basically it's looking, it knows exactly where I'm searching from, which is right where this blue dot is, sitting here in Broadmead, Cordova Bay area. And then Google, with the Google local results, when it knows that it's important where a business's location is, it generally shows closer businesses more prominently than further away businesses. But of course, scrolling down below the map, we see, and you can click on these, which I won't do right now because I don't want to go off anywhere else, but you can click on those and explore the different results right through the map. Down below, there's what is typically called the Google My Business 3-pack, because Google usually displays 3 organic results there. But of course, you can also insert an ad in that area. How that ad gets in there is if you're doing Google search ads, you can use the location extension, and that enables your ads to show up in there. And so, yeah, and again, it's kind of funny because other than the map, there's nothing but paid at the top of the page. Scrolling along, so here's the 3-pack, and here's the 3 most prominent, actually it's technically not most prominent, but it's the results that Google will think are most relevant to me. So we have, it's funny, yeah, this is Richard's practice. He lives around the corner from me, but he also is very close by with his practice down in Shelburne, other side of Mount Doug. He's got a ton of reviews, and he's showing up first here. There's other folks that are a little bit closer, like this Miller Shannon, Dr. Shannon Miller is quite close by to where I am, but she's only got one review, so maybe not quite as prominent. And there's Royal Oak is obviously very close by as well, but no reviews. So this is really interesting. And actually it appears that these two listings don't even have websites. So quite interesting. I'm almost surprised that they're showing up. So how you rank in this 3-pack, technically it has nothing to do with ads, except for the ad placement. Has nothing to do in theory with SEO, but that said, SEO can influence it. And basically what this, you know what, I will click off into this in a new window. So here is basically Victoria Family Chiropractic's Google My Business results. So this, your Google My Business, and if you're a local business, actually, if you're any business and haven't signed up for your Google My Business listing, do that absolutely right away. Because as much as the 3-pack and your overall results technically aren't implemented between the SEO and the Google My Business, being strong in one area dramatically increases your prominence in the other area. And that's actually a very common theme with Google, is the more fleshed out you are in any of the Google areas, the more likely you are to appear. Basically, everything helps in the Google ecosystem. And so a strong Google My Business listing will get you showing up in these 3-packs for people who are searching from nearby. And it will also boost your SEO. Conversely, SEO alone absolutely cannot get you in here, but having strong SEO will help where you appear in here. And then, so now we finally move along and here's what are typically considered the SEO results. So they're way down the page at this point. There's exactly 2 of them. And then it gets into the questions, question and answer. People also ask. Below that, there's the remainder of what we'd call the SEO or organic results. And then of course, at the bottom, there's a couple more ads. So there's a lot going on here, clearly. And really the things that strike me are basically that you're just not very prominent in the organic SEO results. On the flip side, there are dramatically more clicks on the SEO results than the other results. So the big takeaway though in this particular view is that if you're not in the top 2 on the page, you're probably going to have some challenges getting much organic traffic or visits. And you will get some lower on the page, absolutely. It's still definitely of value to be in the top 10 and be on that first page. But in this market, you would really want to be shooting for the top couple. So from that perspective, let's move into looking at some national results. And again, I'll switch back over. It's kind of funny because I had been using Nike Air Force One as something to search for that was showing up on my national results, but apparently I searched for it too many times and didn't click on the shopping ads because they're no longer showing up for me when I do that. So instead I switched to Adidas 510 Sleuth, which came up as an auto suggestion, probably because I'm a mountain biker. And I actually own the shoes as well. So they're great, by the way. So this is vastly different than anything we saw on the other page. And what this is the Google shopping ads. And it's a really interesting area because it's also totally separate from SEO. Although Google did something really interesting and kind of generous. When the pandemic started, they actually made some free listings available in the shopping feed. So this gets a little bit complex because basically the shopping feed is you set up specific shopping campaigns in your Google Ads account. The shopping feed, the feed itself goes from your site to the Google Merchant Center, which is a different property yet. And then you connect the Merchant Center to the ads account. Now, however, as long as you get your Merchant Center set up, you are eligible to show up for free in this area. And if you're in a competitive market or selling really products where there's a lot of competition, you're probably not going to show up much at all in there. But we do have multiple clients that are set up with that, and they are actually getting free traffic. So there is something to it. Definitely worth considering getting that set up if you're selling products. So of course there's so the paid shopping results. There's our ads down here. And again, mentioning how things change. Interestingly, as of yesterday, when I was looking at this page, there was actually a local 3-pack showing local retailers, actually local being relative, one store here in town, one store in Duncan, and one store over on the mainland that stock these shoes. So again, in this case, though, we've got paid ads, we've got the organic SEO results. Image search comes up. Image search is interesting. I've worked with folks that get really fixated on appearing in image search. Definitely a great thing for your brand if you can be showing up in image search. But I don't know of any, having worked with like hundreds and hundreds of advertisers and clients over the years, I don't know anybody who had a success story about actually making money by showing up in the image search. So it's definitely something to consider, and basically to be eligible in there. Any relevant and original images on your website, you want to have an alt tag and a descriptive file name for. You don't want to go over the top with those, but that is what qualifies you to appear in the image search. And again, it's kind of funny if maybe if I put in Canada, we'll get the 3-pack. Oh gosh darn it. Again, Google watches all your search. There we go. So this is what I saw the first time I searched. Google helpfully thinking, oh, and of course it's totally different results than it had yesterday. So I guess actually it's because I put Victoria in it that it is Victoria specific. So you can see this is somewhere where SEO is going to affect whether you show up in here, because they mention, oh, their website mentions 510 sleuth. So if your site or product page is optimized for these sort of items, if you're selling goods, or even doing services, you're going to be, it being properly optimized is going to make you way more likely to show up here. And that is very prominent. And as I mentioned, usually Google does a good job of telling the difference between whether a search would be important from a local perspective or not. The example I always give is if you're searching for pizza restaurant, Google knows you want a result that's within your delivery area. If you're searching for software, which is actually our next slide. Second to next slide, I'll get there in one sec. If you're searching for software, Google knows you don't actually care if the manufacturer is local, and in fact, you're likely not even going to have a local supplier of if you're searching for a specific software type or something there. And again, we'll get there in a second. So here's where it gets really interesting again. If you're on mobile, this is a screenshot of right off my phone over on the right here, essentially there is nothing organic showing up on the page. And in the example of chiropractor, even if you say you were called Davidson Chiropractic, if somebody searches for Davidson Chiropractic, these ads are still going to show up above your search result. So it gets really interesting. And then of course, Google allows you to bid on other people's names. So somebody might even be bidding on Davidson Chiropractic to show up for that. And I would liken that, it's like putting your Wendy's ad up on a bus shelter outside McDonald's. And again, it's just basically companies that think that people searching for one thing might be swayed and pick another are allowed to do that. You're not allowed to use competitors' names in your keywords, which is what triggers these ads, but you are allowed, again, to bid on them. So this is where we get into, we do a lot of work with clients on what we call brand protection campaigns. And those are something that you can argue that they shouldn't be necessary, that you're getting ripped off by having to bid on your own name, but it is what it is, and that's the environment that we're working in. And interestingly, Google fortunately does reward you. If you do a good job with your brand ads, you get a high click-through rate. Google recognizes that they're highly relevant clicks and gives you a low cost per click. So down below here, I just grabbed an anonymized row from a report for an actual client. These are actual numbers. And as you can see in their brand campaign, they have a 32% click-through rate. So they got 1,200 clicks on 3,800 impressions for a 32% click-through rate, which is extremely high for a click-through rate. And this is where Google rewards them with an 8-cent cost per click. So doing better in paid search, doing a really good job of it, getting a higher click-through rate, absolutely gets you lower cost per click. Their product clicks for their product type are closer to $2. So this is a great example. And in their example, they had 65 sales that meant $10,800 in value at a cost of $96. So there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that it makes sense for them to run a brand protection campaign. And in fact, if they didn't do it, losing one sale would cost more in profits than the $96 they spent on the whole thing. Probably more info than we needed to know. And I did apparently skip through my software one, but I thought I'd just quickly go there. So in this example, did CRM software for landscaping. And again, it's so fun having different results than when I looked at it and prepared my presentation, but it is an ever-changing landscape. So again, we see 3 ads at the top. 2 of them are highly relevant. And then the third one, this maximizer, they're probably just bidding a whole lot. So these 2 landscape CRM ads are probably appearing at the top because they've done a really good job and are getting a high click-through rate and high relevance. Down below, this maximizer and the Capterra ads are probably up near the top because they're bidding like crazy to get up there. Probably because they know the lifetime customer value of people who become clients and have decided it's worth it to do so, which is a good takeaway when you're thinking about ads. And basically, again, there's a lot of prominence of the paid, sort of moving down. And and the one thing I did want to mention is that your ranking, some people think that it's just how much you're willing to pay that will dictate how high you appear in the ads. It's actually not the case. It's your bid times your relevance. So that click-through I mentioned, and that's a simplified way of explaining it, but you can bid much less. And if you have a much higher click-through rate, you'll appear above people, which 2 reasons for that. Google would tell you it's because you're much more relevant, as evidenced by your click-through rate, which is true and is great. On the flip side, they're getting more yield and more dollars by having those higher click-through rates at the top. So it's sort of a win-win for Google because they get to make more money and provide more relevant results. So again, kind of interesting too. Here's an example where Capterra is paying for this, and they're also showing up in the organic results down below. And a lot of folks would argue that if you're showing up prominently in the organic results, that you don't need to run ads. Capterra is a huge site that has done a ton of research, so I guarantee that they have learned that in their case, they actually make more money by appearing in both areas. And sometimes it's different sorts of people that click in the different areas. Sometimes you'll lose clicks from one area or the other if you're not in both. I'm not saying everybody should be in both, absolutely not, but I'm just saying there are business cases where it definitely makes sense. And then again, no surprises. Scrolling down the page, you'll notice that all 3 of the lower ads on the page are not as relevant as those 2 top ones. So I would basically, and they all are big companies that have tons of money. So I pretty much guarantee that it is by having highly relevant ads where the keyword is mentioned right in the headline. That'll be what's driving, or close enough. And oh yeah, landscaping CRM. That would be what's driving those results. So back to our presentation. I think we're basically on track for time, so I'm going to keep moving pretty quick, and then we'll get going on the excitement. A few SEO basics. These are really high-level things, but first off, it is air quotes free. I always kind of laugh when people say, "Oh, well, it's free." It's free until you consider that if you're in a competitive market, you need to have somebody working on it at least part-time in terms of creating content, publishing your content, engaging with other sites online. In large companies and really competitive markets, there might even be an SEO team that is full-time working on it. So I don't really know that the term free applies, but that said, it is absolutely true that both that it doesn't cost when you get clicked on, and also the beautiful thing about that fact is it can grow and grow and your costs don't go up. So it is nicely scalable at low cost in those examples. It can also be, you can also bid on much more broad terms. And by broad, I mean terms that relate to shoppers that are early in the purchase funnel. So for instance, if I was interested in chiropractic, I might start by searching about, like, what is a chiropractor? What does a chiropractor do? Those sort of terms almost never convert to bookings or appointments. And this applies to any industry. Those sort of broad early terms almost never convert to measurable money. Like, nobody's going to click on what is a chiropractor and then book an appointment with you because they found their site. So that's why we almost never do broad terms in paid advertising. And as valuable as they are, we just can't measure the value of them. So there's no means of improving on them or optimizing or knowing that there's that value. But that said, it's obvious that there's value in having your brand present right from near the start of somebody's search. So that's where SEO is great, because you can be really broad. It's also very transparent. Once you learn about SEO, you can evaluate every single one of your competitors. You can identify exactly what they're doing, exactly how much of it they're doing, how good they are at it. And you can basically figure out exactly how much work you will need to do to be able to expect to beat them and get on that first page. And that's very important. And just that screenshot I'm showing is a screenshot from a tool we use in SEO Moz that shows the domain authority. And domain authority is actually much abused in our industry by some sites in certain ways. But essentially, it's an external metric evaluating how authoritative you would be expected to be in Google's eyes. And for normal industries and normal websites, has for over 10 years been the absolute best indicator of how well somebody can do, simply by improving their SEO setup. And then ideally you want to improve it over time, but we can't get into that level of detail right now. I do talk a lot about levels of SEO, and basically I think I change these definitions every single time I present, but it is really good to understand that at the core, there's what I'd call brand SEO, which means having your technical basics set up on your website. You want to have good sort of brand and location practices, sort of like that Google My Business. There's like the basic content on your website with like your meta titles and descriptions have to be properly set up. You need to have a site that loads fast and works properly, or you'll get really punished. And you really need to have your basic business register for your basic business directories in Google My Business and in a consistent manner. And that's kind of the minimum price to play. If you're not doing that, you're going to be missing out on a lot of local searches and brand searches. So that's really the basic and what I'd call kind of the baseline. Sort of the next level of challenge is looking at some proactive local SEO. In that case, if you want to show up within your region or city, you want to be active in that Google My Business, flesh it out nicely, do the odd post. You want to be building reviews. You want to be getting reviews for your business and building engagement. And you want to look at some additional maps and directories, things like Apple Maps and Bing Places for Business, and just, really a step beyond the most basic ones like the Yelps and the Yellow Pages. You want to get a bit deeper. And then getting into competitive SEO, which could be local, could be worldwide. If you're in like law is an excellent example. That's often competitive even locally, whereas something like the software or that CRM software example, that's competitive. You're going to have to compete worldwide because there's basically no relevance to the local part. You need to do a ton of competitive research. You want to find out. You want to use tools like Moz and SpyFu, and there's a whole bunch of them. You want to figure out where you stand, where your competition stands. You want to figure out a strategy and a strategy that you can measure and implement and see how it's progressing as you go. And you also want to do advanced analysis of your property using things like Google Search Console. So that's kind of the basics there. And I know I'm going pretty quick here, but want to get on to the good stuff. And so in terms of the paid search ads, the pay-per-click basics is, it's actually, I would say, the most effective type of advertising in history if you do a good job of it, because basically you can get right in front of the exact users who are currently searching for what you offer. The real caveat there, though, and I do believe that almost every company should have at least a modest paid search campaigns for their absolute most valuable keywords, the absolute most valuable things that people are searching for that would relate to their product. And even in the example, if you're like chiropractor or a service business, lawyer, whatever, any business where location is particularly important, at least having a campaign about those really valuable terms in a tight radius around your business. Because the closer people are to your business, the more likely they are to use you for a service business. So that's an example where even if you're not going to spend thousands of dollars, $100, $200 a month budget to have a radius around your exact location for your prominent search terms, absolutely valuable. No question of that. So I really feel almost everybody should have at least some sort of campaign going, but what that looks like really differs business to business. And really the whole crux of it is you need to focus on searchers' intent. Like, what are people actually searching for? Like, if somebody is searching for, like, we're doing some dental work right now. So if somebody's searching for dental implants, probably at least half of those people just want to know what they do, versus somebody who searches dental implants Tacoma is somebody who's living in Tacoma, and it matters to them that the information that comes up pertains to a local business or local dental implant specialist. Like, that's an example of somebody who's shopping for the service and has very high intent. So that's the biggest way I see folks fail at advertising is failing to distinguish between low intent and high intent keywords, and the costs can also often be very similar between them. And then the other thing is focusing on the whole sales process. So you run an ad, somebody clicks, what happens when they get to your website? Are the next steps clear and obvious? Do you do a great job of making it clear why they'd want to contact you and provide a low commitment way for them to get in touch with you? Anyhow, again, that's an area where I could go on and would go on for hours. So I'm just going to be quiet now. And we're going to move along to the panel. So with this, first I'd like to introduce Mike Williams. Mike owns Jetstream Digital, which is a local agency. He's also running the Alacrity Digital Marketing Bootcamp, which is a fantastic educational opportunity that's been put on. And I've had the pleasure of speaking at it a couple times, and they have some a great team from the community and that Mike's recruited teaching it. And then they've got some really engaged, interesting students as well. So cool program there. Mike is a longtime professional at an international level. I met him when he worked at Neverblue, which was a huge entity that came out of Victoria. And Mike is a PPC lover. On the flip side, we have Yulia. She is an SEO client lead with us here at Plus ROI. She doesn't have nearly the years of experience as Mike, because Mike's pretty old, but she does have a great sort of background knowledge and really strong strategic insight in terms of tactical SEO. And I know we recently had, launched a pillar page SEO strategy for a client that had like dramatically good results almost right out of the gates, which is very rare to see that without a ton of trial and error. So, so basically Yulia is our SEO fanatic. So what we're going to do now is first give each panelist, I'm going to stop sharing while we're doing this, give each panelist just 3 minutes to talk each about kind of their top 3 reasons or so about why their field is better. And then once we're done that, we'll jump into some questions from the audience about PPC and SEO. So maybe we'll start with Mike. Why don't you go first? And I'll just
sure thing. Thanks for having me, Rob. I don't think I've ever been called a PPC lover, but I do agree that's me, and I think measurement of experiences and level of gray hair too. So thanks for having me here. If I had to distill it down to like the top 3 reasons why I like PPC, I think the first one would have to be just like instant gratification. The ability to set up a campaign and instantly see traffic coming in right away. I love that. SEO takes a long time. It's like watching the grass grow. It is worthwhile. I'm not going to say that it's not, but for me, it's like I can instantly get traction. I can see some things happening, good or bad. So I love that part of it. I also love the ability to be able to test things on the fly. So a good strategy can be if you're trying to see which keywords are good or valuable, you can try out your campaign in Google Ads and see which keywords are working, which ones do I like, before you invest the time to build content and an SEO strategy around it. And so I really love that part of it. I'm a big fan of the Google Ads platform and tools like Google Ads Editor, which allow you to make massive changes as well. So I guess the third reason is just like the ability to like fluidly update the campaign on the fly, make massive changes, and change volume up or down based on the success of the campaign. So the ability to optimize is really, really great as well with PPC. So I started out my career in SEO and got really, really excited about it. Loved all the little things you could tinker with and adjust, and then you sit back and wait. But then when I started to do PPC, I got addicted to that because it's like instant. I can see the traffic, I can see what's happening, and I can optimize and improve from there, and I can test and prove things out before I invest further. So I'm not going to say that I'm only a PPC lover, because I do love SEO, but PPC is like instantly rewarding in that you can learn the good or the bad right away. So that's why I'm a PPC lover.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Julia, let's hear your thoughts.
All right. Well, Mike, I will counter that with building your site's SEO is superior to paying for ads, and let me tell you why. For one, organic results are significantly much more trusted by people. They are, really. It's actually scientifically proven that people are dramatically more likely to scroll down through the ads and click on the organic results. In fact, only 27% of website traffic comes from paid search. And people trust the fact that it's been vetted by the search engine and it's proven its worth over a paid ad. So one thing that I really love about SEO is that part of the process is building the trust towards the user. So there's things that you can leverage that you can't do with ads, like having ratings and testimonials on your site and optimizing the knowledge graph that Rob discussed earlier, placing logos, just having people trust you more. And that's something that I love about SEO. Another thing about it is that you get sustained and stable results, and it improves over time. So for example, if you invest in PPC, once you stop paying for the ads, the traffic goes down and the budget runs out, that's it. But with SEO, you create value for years to come. And Rob mentioned domain authority, and it's something that grows with time if you foster it through SEO, and then you rank up in the search engines, and that's not something that anyone can take away from you if you did the right work. You get what you pay for. If you have a reputable SEO professional audit your site and discover opportunities for improvement and you actually implement them, there will be palpable results, and they're guaranteed, and they will reflect positively on your domain authority. Running ads, on the other hand, it's a guessing game. It involves testing, adjusting the whole time. You're kind of paying for it. And speaking of paying, building SEO is much more cost effective, and it's a better return on investment. ROI, as Plus ROI knows. After the initial investment of actually having someone go through and fix the metas and the descriptions, kind of get your site up to snuff, the only money that you're really spending is upkeeping and monitoring performance, because Google does change its algorithms every once in a while and you want to be on top of that, but it's not nearly as much as with PPC, where you're constantly throwing money into the fire. And then there's also creating ongoing content. Of course, you want to stay on top of that, but SEO really complements your content strategy. If you keyword optimize to the right keywords, as Mike did mention, but you can do the research ahead of time through Google Ads. If you're keyword optimizing your blog, your content is going to just fly up there in the search engines. And the higher traffic volumes in turn decrease your cost per acquisition and increase your ROI. And also with SEO, there's no need to pay for both PPC professional services and the ad spend. It's gotten so competitive lately that you have to do both with PPC, whereas with SEO, it's really just the initial big push and then maintenance and content. And that is why I love SEO.
Wow. Well,
Shots fired. Wow.
Mike,
Just
I
came
think
prepared.
I'm just gonna give up on PPC.
Can you tell I'm prepared now?
Oh, I'm not a PPC lover anymore. You changed my mind. I will say, like to Rob's point though, certainly with mobile, when you look at mobile, if someone is advertising in your space, it's very difficult to show up organically. Where you've got like one or two ads there that basically dominate that space, and mobile traffic continues to increase. So I think both platform, I know we're talking about search, but both Google and Facebook are more pay to play. So if you want to be seen or have the reach that you want, a lot of cases, they're going to encourage you to pay to play. And sometimes that organic result, although it's first technically organically on the actual page, it can be like 6th or 7th, maybe even depending on how many ads there are there. So it takes a while for people to scroll. So that's one thing that would be a good argument for doing both, and reinforces that trust of like, yes, I saw them in the top spot with the ad, and then I also saw them organically, or I saw them top spot with the ad, I saw them in Google My Business, and I saw them organically. I think that's really going to jump off the page to any user. So
I agree with Mike there. For someone to see the ad there as well as the organic result on the first page, that's basically like you're sold.
yes.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And Mike, you just actually answered the very first question from Brian about whether it has to be a choice between PPC and SEO, and what about doing both? So great question, Brian, and very prescient, Mike, of you to answer it before it was posed to you.
Well, I made a post yesterday about this topic, SEO versus PPC, and the experts that were all adding their comments was like, both, it's both, and here's why. And so they make really good cases for both. But I think you also have to keep in mind your strategy, your goals, right? And when you're looking at those things, you really have to look at your resources. What do you have for time? What do you have for money? What do you have for people to execute on that, and then make your decision based on that. So in most cases, it should be a both as the answer, but in some cases it can be an either or based on the resources you have. And I think people really need to look at that. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially for small businesses, even referencing your post, Mike, the book Traction, where it recommends getting really good at something rather than distributing your efforts. And definitely with a lot of small businesses, they kind of do have to choose, or startups, where to be good at. But yeah, with that whole both thing, you have all kind of ruined my conclusion at the end of this. But with that said, I've got some questions here. Please, anybody ask anything about PPC or SEO, throw in some questions either in the chat or in the Q&A. And here's a great one from Jude. And actually, first I'm going to ask Mike, there is a question about whether that is a helicopter behind you.
Yeah, this is actually, so I'm at home, but this is a photo from the Alacrity Canada offices downtown on Fort Street in Victoria. And the helicopter was from a movie, I think it was Ocean's 12. And then the side here, that's a gondola that's brought down from Whistler. So it's a cool space if you ever get a chance to get down and check it out post-COVID. So.
All right.
Yes, it is a helicopter.
Very cool. I can't compete with that. I have a wall.
And the next question from Jude. Hey, Jude, is what are the best free tools for analysis for SEO? And so
that would be a question for me. There's a couple of good tools you can use. I believe Moz.com does require a sign up, but the Chrome plugin for that, as far as I know, you don't have to log in for that. So that's a way to check your domain authority, and it'll give you kind of at least a rough estimate of the kind of linking domains that you have, which is a good way to start building your SEO, is to find out if you have enough and if the ones that you have are actually any good. And there's SERPstat, which is another free one, I believe. There's a number of ones that you can leverage to check your site speed and things like that, and which is especially relevant lately since Google implemented It's the new mobile first indexing and the new the metrics that it measures, which speed is a huge part of. So for that would be site speed, like Google site speed. And there's also gtmetrics.com is another also free one that's good for that. I can post links later if you like to more. Rob, is there any more you'd like to add to that list?
I mean, there's a million of them. Like Ahrefs is good, and there's the one that we never use, but everybody else says is really good. I've forgotten the name of. Somebody's going to point it out in a moment. SpyFu is a great tool for competitive research. It's my favorite for competitive research, and SpyFu is interesting because like we have a permanent subscription to it. But what I discovered is that if you subscribe and then leave, they actually have this $39 a month offer that they don't otherwise promote. So yeah, so the ones we pay for right now, the top two we pay for right now are Moz.com, mostly just for unlimited use of the Site Explorer on there, or sorry, the Link Explorer on there, which is great, and then SpyFu as well. And we're paying subscription fees for both of those that are less than what their published ones are. So there are some deals out there that you particularly discover if you do a monthly subscription and then leave. What I would say too is almost any of them are worth signing up for a month for, doing every bit of research that you would possibly want to do, and then canceling. And I mean, I think the most expensive ones are about $100 a month, but in literally a morning, you can get more research than you could possibly imagine that in years gone by would have cost thousands of dollars to have somebody do. So with that said, in terms of some more questions, so Mike, I'm curious to hear how you answer this, because I also get this question all the time, which is like, I don't click on ads and none of my friends do. Why would I ever do paid ads? And I'm sure you've heard this one before. Yeah,
I hear it all the time. And you know, both Google and Facebook make about 90 to 95% of their revenue from ads. So, you know, my argument would be that, you know, people do click on ads. They definitely do. And if you really think back on your own behavior, a lot of times you probably skip over ads. We see a lot of ads all the time, whether they're in search or, you know, display or on a site or whatever. We're easily, you know, blind to those ads. But when it is really, really relevant to you, so say you put in like, I want these shoes, and you see an ad for it and it's the shoes that you want, then you will click on it. And it might be rare. It might be 1 in 1,000 times, but you do click on them. And so there are people that are potentially less skeptical than you, and also, you know, less aware. I was talking to someone that I know that they're a little bit older, but they actually asked me like, how does Google make money? And they had no idea that there were ads there. So, you know, there's a big portion of the audience outside of those that are knowledgeable about the digital marketing space that doesn't realize that there are ads, and Google does a pretty good job of making it not super obvious that they are ads. So the argument would be that people do click on ads. The proof is that Google makes a lot of money from ads. It's their, you know, main monetization for the company. So they do. And if you think about your own behavior, maybe it's 1 in 1,000, but if you do that, you know, across the world, that's still a lot of people clicking on ads. That's my argument. So, and I mean, I've spent lots of money, you know, on ads, getting people to click on them. So they do click when it's hyper relevant, which is Google's thing as well with Google ads, is you want to make your ads really relevant. They search the term, show that term in the ad, show that term in the landing page. That's a relevant, useful experience, versus when you see an ad on a website that's totally irrelevant. It's really easy to dismiss that. It's not relevant to you. It's not interesting. It's disconnected from the landing page. You're not going to follow that through. Google's very committed to having a good user experience, whether it's through organic or the ad platform. Awesome. So got a SEO question. I think you live for if you're up for it. Question about content strategy and someone who's wondering, should you plan your SEO strategy or your content strategy first? So basically, is content just part of your SEO strategy, or should you plan your content strategy first and then figure out how to implement SEO? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That's a great question. Both is the answer. You want to have the content optimized for SEO, but first I would say you have to start with finding relevant content, because it's all about having people click on it, and them clicking on it means that they have to have interest in it. So I would first start with the kind of research to figure out what it is people want to see, and then I would optimize that for the keywords that they're searching for, and then make the content. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, just like I see that Brian's mentioned that most of his revenue comes from ads, so that people are definitely clicking on them. And yeah, and I think to Mike's point, I often wonder if people realize that that the ads even are ads sometimes. Google has gotten way more subtle over the years about their flagging of what's an ad versus what's not an ad.
I definitely agree with what Mike was saying before too. Like my grandma, she's always clicking
Oh,
the
yeah.
ads because she has no idea. And she's like, oh, the result is right there. So yeah, a lot of opportunity there, unfortunately for PPC.
So question for anybody who wants to take it. I've got someone who's wondering the question, which is harder to do in-house, SEO or PPC?
I would say PPC is harder. Because with SEO you usually do like the one-off big push and the technical overhaul and the setup, which you do want to have a professional doing, just because it's a little tough to kind of get all the pieces together on your own. But then after that, like I mentioned before, the focus is just on the monthly content and engagement, and obviously you want to keep following good SEO practices onwards. But with PPC, it's a maintained effort. So I would say it's harder to do in-house. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, my first thought is both, but I don't want to just be the person that says both all the time. My number one concern with managing PPC in-house would be making an error and spending a lot of money accidentally, and there's really no way to get that money back. Once Google spends it for you and you've said, hey, I want to spend this amount, they're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to call them up and say, hey, I spent this accidentally, and get your money back. And there are a little bit more guards around this, but you used to be able to like accidentally put the bid in, or the decimal in the wrong place. And I've bid $500 when it meant to bid $5, or your budget being 5,000 instead of 50. That really does happen. And if you don't keep an eye on these things, you can spend a ridiculous amount of money ridiculously fast. If you're inexperienced. So if you go in and you say, I want to bid on red shoes because we sell shoes, and you accidentally bid a high amount with a high budget, and suddenly that money's gone and you get nothing for it. And like, I think Rob made the point as well, is ads work if they're done right. It's really easy to do them wrong, and Google wants you to think it's okay for every ma and pa, and that it's really simple to set up, but it can be very complicated. There are cases where it can be really simple, but there are a lot of cases it's really, really complex. And I would hate to see anyone make that mistake and lose their shirt on clicks that are totally irrelevant.
No good.
Yeah, and I would tend to, just to kind of jump in there, I would tend to agree, both as somebody who has personally made a multi-$1,000 mistake in Google Ads. Don't tell Danielle that. I don't know that I've ever shared that, but it's funny, as recently as like literally this week, there's a brand new ads client who's come on board. And Yuli, I probably shouldn't share the secret, but Yuli is actually working on their account right now. They're a lawyer out of California. They went through the process of doing Google's automated ad setup and have been spending some money, not huge money, but money. And they were really excited because they had one sign up, one lead that came in from it. And upon digging in, what it turned out was the automated setup. If you dig far enough, you can find out the search term report. That they kind of hide it, but you can find the search term report for what did you actually pay for. And it was all brand terms. So they were thinking that they were advertising for their legal services, when in practical terms, what they were actually advertising for was their brand name. So yeah, definitely. Although I should mention too, just I'm a fan of DIY and learning stuff. What I would say is with the ads, it's not a light commitment. If you love it and want to do it in-house and are willing to make a meaningful effort at it, 100% go for it. There's a million resources out there. There's a lot of self-study, but know that 100 hours in, you're going to be okay at it.
Mhm.
So but that said, if it's critical to your business, it can become a real profit center, and definitely I would, well, I shouldn't give the advice, but you'd almost want to hire someone to help get started and then slowly learn as much as you possibly can from them until you're comfortable taking over. But I also have to be careful about offering advice because I'm kind of biased, and actually that's bad advice, or advice that goes against our own interests, but nonetheless, that is what it is. So with that said, I think that the questions that have been submitted are wrapped up, and I'm just, yeah.
I see one more from Carol, and I think you just answered it literally just now with she's asking that I mentioned the management fees for PPC, and she's being pitched by automated local search ad platforms for small clients that claims to really reduce those. What thoughts do you have on that?
So again, and sorry, I actually missed a couple of questions there. So did you want to answer that, Mike, or I was?
Yeah, I mean, I like been pitched by an automated local search ad platform. So I'm not familiar with what that would be, but I personally would be extremely skeptical of that. There's lots of bidding tools out there, and I've played around with some of them, not on the local level, but honestly, they haven't been very effective. And I'm a big fan of manually like understanding your accounts and not turning on a lot of automation until you've gathered a significant amount of data. And sometimes in order to get that data, it costs a lot of money. So if you want to scale up slowly with a smaller budget, I think manually being in there and having your hands and your eyes on the campaign works better, but you need to have some expertise. So I'm not familiar with what that they're actually promising, but the way it's worded, I would be skeptical to start.
Yeah, and you know what, just looking at it, and I totally echo what Mike says, in theory, that technology will happen. In practice, I've evaluated a ton of them and haven't seen one that does it well yet. And Carol, I mentioned this, obviously, Carol and I know each other, so I'd be happy to have a look and give you an opinion there separately. And with this note, there are some more questions. We will answer them, but I'm just going to do a brief interlude so we can just finish literally the last slide or so that we can send people on their way that do have to leave at 11. So I will just share the screen again. That should be sharing now. Oh, nope. I'm going to click that last button. Should be sharing now. So again, Brian, you nailed it. Stole my thunder. Absolutely an integrated approach in my mind is the way to go with PPC for things like the brand protection, mobile, your most highly profitable search terms for generating near-term sales. And then also for what Mike really hit on, which is experimentation and learning. PPC, you can't debate that PPC actually does a better job of those specific things. But again, looking over at SEO, I actually believe that companies that stick with SEO, that SEO does become their highest ROI activity. Our challenge is that return on investment happens like next year or the year after. I'd love to be able to say it's like next month, but that's not how it works. The investment you make now, if you do it well, will pay off big time next year, the year after, and 5 years from now, it could scale to be just ridiculously successful. So SEO is great though for local and low hanging fruit. You want to get to that minimum baseline level. It's great for targeting those broad keywords and more top of funnel stuff. And it's invaluable to add to your content and engagement strategy. And doing so adds value to your content and engagement strategy that makes it way easier to invest in those things as well. And also, again, for those long-term sales. And just in terms of looking at an overall sort of keyword and search strategy, some big things to keep in mind with your with your strategy are sort of monitoring cannibalization between channels. And at simplest, something that like with brand campaigns, you can do what's called a search impression share report in PPC to see how often companies, if you have a brand campaign running, you can see how often other companies are actually bidding on that term. And then you can actually, in that case, it's like, oh, well, if nobody else is bidding on it on certain devices or in certain regions, you can turn off the advertising and you don't have that cannibalization from organic to paid. If you're really pro PPC, you can pro SEO, you can absolutely think about replacing PPC with SEO over time. So like from the perspective, okay, well, I'm going to run paid ads until we're ranking in SEO. And so have that kind of migration with the unified strategy. Again, with SEO, you can do like Google Search Console is like the most underused free tool ever, but you can actually look and see, oh, what terms are we showing up in 12th spot on for? Like which terms are really important to our business, but we're showing up on the second page. Get those into your PPC strategy. Tons of research and information that can help there. And then the other way around, as Mike mentioned, there are literally the dark side of SEO. Actually, the dark side of SEO to me is working with a vendor that doesn't ever inform you about the competitive environment, because that's actually the biggest factor in whether you're going to succeed with SEO or not. So that and all the spam. The one thing about SEO is that companies can invest in SEO for years on trying to rank for a keyword without any clue as to whether that keyword will actually make them money. So it's like, well, hey, before we commit to spending a year on this keyword set, why don't we test this keyword set in PPC and make sure that the keywords actually resonate with our clients? Then let's drive them to landing pages where we test different calls to action, test different headlines, test different benefits. And that learning process through PPC can absolutely inform your SEO strategy in a big way. Then lastly, a quick shameless plug. We do a ton of PPC and SEO through Plus ROI Online Marketing, which is our agency that's been running for 13 years. We do custom digital strategies for anybody who's interested in competing at a high level. We also have Jumpstart Web, which is our newest division. It's been around for a couple of years now, coming up on 2.5, and it works exclusively with local advertisers, and we have recently added very meaningful search engine optimization services to it. Difference with Jumpstart Web, super streamlined. It is strategies that have been figured out that work for local industries. So much more cost effective, but definitely not the same level of one-on-one support, but a fantastic value that actually makes sense for budgets of smaller businesses. We don't push, we don't sell, but if you ever do want to chat, love to get in touch, and you can track me down on LinkedIn. In fact, anybody that has questions about what we talked about, or even if you just want to get a sense of, if you have a website and want some insights as to, hey, what are our competition doing? Should we be looking at SEO or should we be looking at PPC? Feel free just to reach out and you will get some absolutely valuable free advice without any sales pitch or follow-up. So that was my sales pitch, trying to give you some free advice. So moving over to Q&A and discussion, and I will stop the sharing again and let's wrap up. Thanks to everybody for attending, and absolutely feel free to take off. And that said, we will stick around and just go through the rest of the questions and answer any more that come in. So I'll stop sharing. So for everybody that does leave, thanks so much for attending. And let's get back to those questions.
Well, I see one here from John. I don't think that we've answered them. I agree that PPC is great to drive traffic, but doesn't SEO planning really make a difference in driving conversions? Once you've got them to the site, you need to convert them, do you not? The answer is yes, you do need to convert them. That's what landing pages are great for. Landing pages are more of a PPC thing, I'll give Mike that, but a lot of SEO is a conversion rate optimization, which is funneling the user from that moment when they land onto your page to the moment where they convert, and then they take the action that you would like, whether be it purchasing your product or contacting you for more information. So it is a combined effort, but but conversion rate optimization is what you're after with that, and that is more SEO, I would say.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting too. Saw a wonderful site this morning for someone that was interested in SEO, but nowhere on their homepage did they invite somebody to take a next step and get in touch. So to John's point, I think that you kind of need to take that PPC mindset of like, oh, somebody's arriving at the page and I need to convert them. You need to tastefully apply that to the rest of your site. So it looks like we had a question for Mike, and Sarah's asking, when paying for ads, is it better to go to a landing page, which essentially is a specific sales page for what you're advertising, or your regular page?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I would really encourage people to be creating a landing page. If you're going to be paying for this traffic, you want to create a landing page that matches the searcher's experience up to that point. Most successful PPC campaigns focus on bottom of funnel keywords that have a lot of intent, meaning that they're ready to buy. They're not just searching for, what is a chiropractor? It's like, where can I book an appointment, or, chiropractor in Victoria, book today, something like that has a lot of intent with it. And so when you do that, you don't want to just send them to the homepage and hope that they find the booking page. You'd be better off to deep link and send them to the booking page. But even better than that is to create an actual custom page, landing page for them that brings them into the conversion, and brings that conversion forward so that they can take the action that you want. So think about the goal of that page and the purpose. And if you're paying for clicks, like I said, you don't want to just send them somewhere and hope that they find their way to the action. You want to make it really, really easy and remove any friction that stops them from taking that action that you want. Don't put the work onto the user to have to find the action that they want to take. Bring it forward and make it very obvious. That's what's going to lead to more successful campaigns. And if you can increase the conversion rate of your landing page, you can eventually end up spending more on PPC or make more keywords successful. So optimization is a huge part, and is very much in your own control to make that happen. So to answer the question simply, landing page 99% of the time. There are occasions where you may want to send them to a blog post or something, but talking about bottom of funnel, ready to convert users, send them to a landing page, remove all the friction, and let them convert.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. And I see we've got a question from Liz, but first I'm going to just answer John's question quickly. He asks if you're seeing any real value in ads on Bing. And in our case, I'm going to jump in on that one myself, and maybe Mike can give his thought too. But yes, for example, we work with some care homes, in-home care providers, as well as a maker of mobility devices. And in all those examples, Bing is a very meaningful source of sales and leads for those companies. So again, it really depends on the market. If you're going after folks consumers under 40, no, but definitely certain markets, like I mentioned, it's absolutely valuable. Mike, do you have any follow-up thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with what Rob's saying. I think Google owns like 90% of the search market though. So typically we would start with Google, and then adding Bing would be like adding another small part of volume. But with like any digital marketing campaign, whether you're doing, social media search or display or anything, where is your audience? And you need to go there, and you need to be there. So Bing may make a lot of sense, but it's less likely that that's the option for every business. And again, resources matter too. Like if we're going to create a Google campaign, we could put time and effort and resources and budget into that. Adding another platform might be the thing that makes it less viable for you. But don't completely dismiss it just because it's Bing, I guess would be my advice.
Yeah, well, it's funny too, you saying that sort of twigs something in my mind, which was our strategy used to be that if a campaign had scaled in Google and gotten to the maximum size that it could be for the available volume, at that point, we would basically duplicate the same strategy and the same campaign in Bing, and that would usually work fairly well to a smaller percentage. Bing has now made it so that you can import your campaigns directly and in fact hook up through the API, which has some sometimes unintended consequences of, if you leave it hooked up, it can actually update and change to reflect what's going on in the Google account, even if you've made changes on the Bing side. So proceed with caution there, but Microsoft has figured out that most people are on Google and has now made it as ridiculously easy as possible to simply import your Google campaigns. And with that said, we've got an SEO question from Liz for Yulia, and Liz asks how you mentioned that SEO is a long-term investment versus PPC having the instant gratification, and how Liz's automotive industry is very offer specific with fast turnaround, which is suited for PPC. Any thoughts about how SEO can be leveraged there?
Yeah, absolutely, Liz. I mean, in my mind, SEO can be leveraged anywhere, but in this particular situation where you have kind of a fast-moving product that you found ads to be effective in, you could still benefit from SEO. I would say a three-pronged approach would probably do best. For one, I would definitely focus on competitors, and I find with the automotive industry, especially the local one, the sites aren't quite as great as you would like them to be. So there's a lot of opportunity to leverage your SEO to fly above them without putting in too much effort and money into that. So definitely competitor research, huge for that. Another thing I would say is kind of use the things that you learned from the PPC efforts, like whatever descriptions and headlines are working for the sales there, I would put those as the meta descriptions and titles, or at least kind of use the keywords from those, and because you people are clicking on that, and then you know that they'll be clicking on your site as well when you optimize for that. And again, I feel like a broken record here, but trust, especially with automotive sales. Like, people are looking for bigger and better with that and best price. So you want to get those ratings on there, like maybe implement some schema on your site to have the ratings show up right away if you have good ones. If you don't have good ones, you could have a program where customers who are pleased write ratings for you and kind of do some content stuff there. So yeah, there's definitely tons of opportunity there. That's my side. Anyone else want to chime in?
I'll just reiterate the trust and authority, right? Like, I like PPC because we can get going with a client and get some things going, especially if they're a startup. We can kind of get some traction and see some revenue and conversions coming in, but we don't want to forget about the longer term implications of creating a SEO thought leadership strategy with content that creates more of a hold over time. So because if we turn off that traffic, on the PPC side, it goes away. So look at the PPC side as rented traffic, and look at the SEO as like you own that traffic. And so once you turn off the PPC, like I said, the traffic goes away. So you don't want to get too focused on just that and forget that you want a longer term strategy that creates you're a little bit more established as a leader, as a thought leader. And Yulia is right. It's all about trust. If people trust your business, they will click on your ads. They will click on your SEO. They'll open your emails. They'll, reply to your tweets. Trust is huge in this. And there's an acronym that's often used. It's EAT: expertise, authority, and trust. Right. And if you have those three things, then people will click on your stuff because they believe in you. And think about the brands that you like. Like for me, I like Bubbly. I'm drinking Bubbly. I like Stance socks. There's certain products, Lululemon stuff, that if I see stuff from them, I'm intrigued by it and I will click on it, regardless of whether it's, PPC, SEO, email, whatever.
Thanks, Mike. And also, I want to add a quick note with, for you, Liz, I would also say social media, like the offsite SEO you want to build for that as well, because that's, again, something that stays with you and that it helps with people trust building. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, both of you. Those were great. And Mike, I'm going to steal that rented versus owned analogy. That's awesome, actually. That's a fantastic way of describing it.
I don't know where I heard that. I didn't make that up either, but it makes a lot of sense to me too.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions. We'll give another moment or two and see if anything else pops in. But as mentioned, always welcome to follow up and just contact me directly with any questions. I'm pretty easy to track down, and again, love connecting on LinkedIn. So, and quite frankly, actually, you'll get our information because we'll send out the video archive of the event as well. Things are a bit busy, but that should get up next week and out to you. So with that said, there are no more questions. So thanks so much, Mike and Yulia. That was really awesome. That's the first panel that we've done in this series, and this is the longest that people have held on. So I think we're gonna keep going with this format. That was really wonderful. Thanks so much.